Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Samzilla33 here, and welcome to episode 38 of the show about Pokemon TCG stuff mix up. Yep, bringing that back. And this episode is all about the new Dusknoir from Boundaries Cross, which is definitely one of my favorite cards from the set. Just opens up several opportunities. It's not really a main part of any deck, it's mainly just a tech to help with conserving damage. But there are some decks that really get a huge boost out of it, and some that are just like, meh about it. Don't really care. They're fine with it. They're fine without it. So yeah, I guess just take a look at Dusknoir. So let's take a look at the guest of honor himself, Dusknoir. Dusknoir has 130 HP, a dark weakness, 3 retreat, and a horrible, horrible attack. I can see next to no situation where you would use this attack. So other than the HP, everything has gone wrong for this card. It has some nasty retreat and a weakness to one of the best attackers the game has, Darkrai. So let's see if its ability can make up for the very unfortunate stats it has. Spoilers, it does. Its Sinister Hand ability allows you to move the damage on your opponent's side of the field to anywhere on their field as often as you want. That sounds useful. It allows you to keep any damage counters you aren't using to KO a Pokemon and save it for later, or capture up a Pokemon they most likely aren't going to be using for a few turns, and move the damage you do to it to their stronger Pokemon on the bench. Or just keep all the damage on their field and get all 6 prizes, or at least a large majority of them, at the same time, avoiding problems within. That sounds even better. So what cards go well with Dusknoir? Well, as I've already said, Darkrai is one of the best attackers we have, and it's got some energy acceleration behind it without having to fit in another Pokemon. It's also got some great consistency behind it in the form of Sableye. Another great thing about this combo is the fact that Darkrai does 90 damage and 30 to the bench, which can go up to 120 damage anywhere you want. To top it all off, you can attach a Dark Claw to him and add another 20 damage. Seems like the perfect combo, right? Well, here's the list I've been testing the deck with. 3 Sableye is always a good number to have of it in Darkrai decks, since it's your best starter. 3-1-3 Dusknoir is a decent line. It allows you to get rid of Dusknoir with Ultra Ball or Juniper and still have a backup in case your Dusknoir goes down. Same goes for Duskull too, I guess. 3 rare candy should be enough, since you have Sableye and Skyla to help get the rare candy plus Dusknoir in the same hand. 4 really shouldn't be needed. I have 3 Ultra Ball, which may seem like a low number, since most Darkrai decks have 4 and you also have Dusknoir to set up. That's mostly because I have Computer Search in here replacing one of the Ultra Balls. Energy Switch is just so good in this deck. It allows for much better chances of getting a turn 1 Sableye, as well as moving useless energy off of things such as Sableye, heavily damaged Darkrai's, and Dusknoir you needed to retreat. Dark Claw would be the preferred tool over Eviolite in this deck, since that extra 20 damage is going to end up somewhere. The supporter line is 4 Juniper, 4 N, 3 Skyla, and 2 Random Receiver. Skyla is great for getting trainers into play and in the discard, such as Computer Search, for the use with Sableye later. You also have Sableye to help with consistency on the turn you're using your supporter for a Skyla. Unlike other decks which I have had problems with Skyla, this one works pretty well in. Random Receiver is of course in there so Sableye can junk hunt for them. Computer Search is fantastic in this deck, since it allows for Sableye to junk hunt for whatever he wants, and it helps discard Dark Energies. Speaking of which, I have 13 Dark Energies. It gets the job done. So how did this deck turn out? Very well, actually. Unlike Hydreigon, this deck can go several turns without Dusknoir, since you can still 2-shot things, and most likely still have some damage left over to get some 1-shots on new things your opponent will send up. It also doesn't have a huge problem with fighting decks, since you can just capture up a Terrakion, either one, and move damage you deal to it to their stronger Pokemon on the bench, such as Landorus EX. I think this is a serious contender for cities. Definitely try testing it and see what I'm talking about. So, what's next? A Selgor, that's what. This one uses the Selgor Gothitail strategy while keeping a Dusknoir on the bench. What does it do? Basically what it does is move enough damage off the active Pokemon to the bench, allowing deck and cover's poison damage to KO the Pokemon going into your turn. Or just keep the active Pokemon paralyzed while knocking out things on the bench. Sounds genius, but clunky. It's very similar to the Selgor Vileplume Chandelure deck last format, but sadly, we've lost some of the best cards from that deck. Pokemon Collector, Twins, Mew Prime, and of course Vileplume. Here's the list I decided on after enough testing. Just looking at it, it looks really cramped. 2-1-2 Dusknoir, 2 Catcher, 6 Dark Energy, 1 Computer Search, 3/3 Selgor is enough that you can have enough in your deck once the lock gets going, preferably 2/1 or 2/2 minimum, while still being able to Juniper 1 or maybe 2 without worrying. Gothitail is to make sure your opponent doesn't use Switch or Catcher to get out of the paralysis. The Gothitail line is a little smaller than I would have hoped, since it's the most likely thing to take hits, subsequently needing more after it gets KO'd. But the deck is so tight on space that the extra Gothitail just had to be cut. 2/1/2 Dusknoir is even smaller, but it's one of the least desirable targets for your opponent. They'll usually be going after your Shelmet or Gothitas, or if the situation calls for it, Darkrai or Mew. Dusknoir just isn't needed nearly as much as the rest of them to lock down your opponent, so you'll usually only need about this much. I'd probably add another Gothitail before adding another Duskull. Mew EX is there to use deck and cover for your Selgor, since a basic is easier to get out repeatedly than a stage 1. Darkrai EX is a key part of your strategy. It allows Gothitail to retreat for free, since it has 2 retreat costs and is needed to be in the active position and retreat every turn. Only having to have 1 energy on it the whole game saves you a few headaches. 4 rare candies needed since you're running 2 stage 2s. I have a 3 Ultra Ball and 3 Level Ball split. Level Ball is the best card for searching out your Selguard after they shuffle themselves back into your deck. Ultra Ball is great for discarding cards you won't need when you're trying to get a Mew EX or Shelmet and a Selgor plus DCE every turn. Here's one of the benefits of this deck the Selgor Vileplume Chandelure deck from last format didn't have. Catcher. This card helps so much in many situations, such as when your opponent has an Eviolite on their active, slowing everything down tremendously, or if they have something weak to either a Selgor or a Mew on their bench. You can use this to speed up the process. It also helps when you can't continue to lock on one turn. If you can't get a deck and cover, catcher up something your opponent won't be able to retreat for a few turns. 2 is not exactly a great number, but again, you need the space. And I don't need a third catcher too often. Super Rod might help more than you think. You have so many cards like Ultra Ball and Juniper that get rid of cards, of which you need several different Pokemon to make your strategy work. Just trust me, you need 2 in this deck. Otherwise, you'll be running out of something, I guarantee. For the supporters, I have 4 Juniper, 4 Churn, 3 Bianca, and 3 N. As I've said before, Juniper is great for thinning out your deck. Churn is just a good card to have. Even though I hate Bianca, I'm not sure where I was going with that. I still hate Bianca, but Random Receiver would get rid of too many supporters, and you need to be drawing enough cards each turn for you to deck and cover. N might seem terrible in this deck, since it can get you down to a really low hand size, but this deck takes a really long time to set up, and since last format we had other good supporters to help you set up, this format we've got Jack. So Ns will often be used early enough, i.e. before you get any prizes, to set up, rather than later where they won't affect you. You usually want to save your Charons and Biancas for the late game drawing. I tried Skyla and Hugh in this deck, but neither really worked well at all. Computer Search, as I've said, is great for discarding cards and blah 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 blah. For the energy, I have 4 DCE, 3 Blend, and 3 Dark. DCE is exactly the energy count that Selgor needs to deck and cover. Dark energies are used to give things free retreat with Darkrai. Blends are just there because some of your Pokemon use Psychic and Grass energy, such as Duskull and Gothorita. You may say, why not run 4 Blends? I mainly run more Dark energy so I can Super Rod them. Also, so Enhanced Hammer won't be too likely to rain on your deck and covers next turn. So how did this one turn out? Yet again, very well. My win-loss ratio wasn't that great. Really stupid stuff kept happening, like I Juniper 2 with Selgor on the first turn. That was before I ran Super Rod. Having 2 Gothita prized, and my third one being KO'd early, and I had to Juniper my Super Rod. Prizing 2 DCE, prizing 2 with Selgor. It got to the point where I thought it was a problem with the list, but that doesn't even make any sense. Or maybe just a problem with Play TCG's randomizer, I don't know. The lock rarely gets broken once it's started. I usually had enough supporters at the end to keep drawing all my Selgors, and N wasn't a big problem, something the Selgor Vileplume Chandelure deck had a problem with, since I could just move the damage to KO everything at once, and healing cards weren't a problem since they were trainer locked. The main problem is actually getting set up. Your field has to be very specific. You have to have 1 Dusknoir, 1 Darkrai, 1 Gothitail, and 1 Selgor, preferably another Selgor, Shelmet, or Mew. That's only 1 other free spot, which usually goes to another Selgor or Mew. With the very specific setup, you'll usually have to dig to get exactly what you want, while accounting for what's getting knocked out by your opponent while they're waiting to get engulfed by your lock. The other 2 problems this deck has are Keldeo EX and Garbodor. Even though Keldeo is weak to a Selgor, Russian gets rid of your special conditions, and they can very easily one-shot Gothitails. You can guess why Garbodor is a problem, since it gets rid of all your abilities. If you can get your Gothitail out before they attach a tool to their Garbodor, you should be fine, but that rarely ever happens. You might want to fit in a Tool Scrapper or two if you're worried about it. Keldeo is pretty much unavoidable. I'll be sure to get some recorded games with this deck, because I'm really considering this playing for cities. It's that good. The final deck idea I had was Kyurem v Dusknoir. The idea is to spread damage to everything and move the damage around so that Glaciate knocks out several things at once. If your opponent has a full bench, Kyurem does a whopping 180 damage total, the most damage you can do, not counting Rayquaza EX and White Kyurem EX, which knock out the defending Pokemon, which defeats the purpose of Dusknoir. Even if they don't have a full bench, it usually adds up to around 150 or 200. 90 is not that bad either. Here's the list I've been using. I added a Kyurem EX in here for an attacker that does high damage in case your opponent lowers their bench too much. In hindsight, I probably should have used Keldeo EX since it does 130 for 4, as opposed to Kyurem EX, which does 120 for 4 with the side effect. But Kyurem EX can also abuse DCE, which is crucial in a deck with no energy acceleration. The Dusknoir line is a little thinner than the Darkrai deck, but that's just to make some space. This one also had Super Rod, so you don't have to worry too much about running out. Switch is there just because of Dusknoir's nasty 3 retreat. The Kyurems don't have the best retreat either. It's kinda hard to remember to add this card in after making 2 Darkrai decks. Experience Share is there to help out with those 3 and 4 energy costs. I also have Eviolite in here, just because it's that good, but the clashing tools could be a problem, but you have Tool Scrapper in case it comes to the case where you need a different tool on your Pokemon. Speaking of which, Tool Scrapper is there to get rid of pesky Eviolites, which slow down your spreading greatly if your opponent gets enough of them on the field. The Super Rod is there just for recovery, in case you need to get your Kyurem EX back, or you ran out of Dusknoir, or just to stop decking out. Super Rod is there to save the day. The supporters are fairly standard. Skyla works decently in this deck. I did find myself having to get supporters with it on occasion, but the deck runs pretty low maintenance once set up. Skyla does get an actual item on occasion, unlike a ton of other decks I've been playing. The energy is fairly standard. The 2 DCE are there to help get turn 1 outrages, and to help Kyurem EX use its attacks. So, can Dusknoir go 3 for 3? Sadly, no. This deck just didn't work as well as the others did. Kyurem is overall a worse attacker than Darkrai, and doesn't have things like Sableye and Dark Patch to help out consistency. I was having a lot of trouble getting Dusknoir out too. Sableye just helps that much. It was fun reliving the Noble Victories days using Kyurem once again. I had one in my Machamp Universe deck back then, but it wasn't giving the results I was hoping for. And that's going to do it for today's episode. I definitely urge all of you guys to test out Dusknoir because he's just a really cool Pokemon, and he's good in so many decks, and he's just really fun to use. As long as you're not using him on the official Pokemon TCG simulator. Then you have to drag the damage, click on the Pokemon you want to move the damage, click on him, click, like you click on Dusknoir, you click on the ability, you click on the Pokemon you want to take damage from, and then you click on the Pokemon you want to move it to. You have to do that for every individual damage counter. It's so annoying. Anyway, yeah. Not too much in terms of new news or anything, so I'm just going to stick to, looking at the new cards from Boundaries Crossed, looking at some new rogue concepts I've had with them. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time for another new card from Boundaries Crossed. Later.